I didn't know claustrophobia, didn't know darkness, until I was trapped in the underbelly of a doomed ship with no windows, no light, no access. It feels like there's no air. Like being sealed in a submarine deep below the surface. The kind of hopeless situation where you can shut off your flashlight and hide, hoping none of the contagious lunatics happen to stumble across you in the pitch, hoping for a chance to escape. But where? With no windows or doors, and the elevators out of power? And the only way out is to make it through the maze of corridors in complete blackness, hoping to find a stairwell, the same stairwell everyone else is trying to reach. When you're alone in the dark, hearing the screams, that escape route might as well be a world away. See, I had no idea the whole. I rushed downstairs to the lower decks to search for Lily Suki. Screams resounded from all directions. Crew, rushing around frantic, didn't even pay attention to me as I dashed through the corridors calling for Lily and swinging my flashlight. To them, the lights were still on, presumably running on auxiliary power since the elevators and engines were out. But to me, seeing the ship as it would look 6 days into the future, dead bodies littered the floor and crimson splashed the walls. But judging by the shrieks, the present wasn't that far from catching up. An alarm was sounding, for fire, or crew muster, or some other emergency. Everywhere was chaos as staff tried to contain those who, like the goateed crewman and the woman in the red dress, had gone mad. The contagion seemed to be spreading exponentially. My shoes slipped on something slick, and I flicked my flashlight downward. Amidst the old, dried blood from my vision was also a patch of fresh, glistening red. Panic shot through me, and in my sticky, bloodied hands the beam. In this pandemonium, how was I ever going to find you? A hand snatched me out of the dark. Cold. You, what's going on? Lily Suki burst, wild-eyed. Oh, thank God. I gasped, relieved she'd found me. I had some sort of contagion, madness. It got my bunkmate. Lily spoke with wild, bloodshot eyes. I woke up and she was peeling off her nails. At first I thought they were. Her fingers were all bloody. Her hands shook. There was no trace of her glittering makeup or carefree persona. Her voice squeaked with panic. I shut her in the bathroom. I held the door closed and she went back to whatever she was doing to herself. If you hadn't warned me. At that moment, the overhead lights flickered on. I winced under the sudden brightness of the fluorescent lighting, snatched in a deep breath as the putrid stench and the corpses along the corridor vanished. The walls returned to white. Passenger X was somewhere nearby, drawing my vision into the present moment. My eyes swept the hallway, across the people rushing here and there down at the far end. Then I turned, and Lily and I saw him at the same moment, standing just behind us. Missing an eye, which now dangled out of his head. Apparently he'd been in some tussles with the security staff. I slid off my backpack. A few streaks of red on the walls, I noted, stayed there even with them. It was real now. I pulled out a bottle. Send yours to remain in your cabins for security reasons. The intercom blared. It had been going for a while now. Wait further instructions. And then, a flurry of voices. An argument. Abruptly, a new voice announced, "All passengers report to your muster stations. This is not a drill. Prepare for immediate evacuation. All passengers." Suddenly, the intercom cut out. The ship went into total darkness. Screams. Shrieks from near and far, including a gasp from Lily. Her cold fingers clutched my arm. It wasn't just me who couldn't see anymore. The auxiliary power, which had been maintaining the electric lights and the PA system after the engine fire, had been cut. The present had finally caught up to my visions. The Sea Star was in total blackout. Lower deck shrieks resounded throughout the ship's underbelly, mingled with sobs and shouts and, more disturbingly, laughter. The sudden, complete darkness was suffocating, smothering, absolute. And though it had always been dark for me, to have it be dark in reality, for everyone, was a different experience. Panic suffused the air. Primal, choking fear that rang out with every cry and penetrated to my marrow. I could almost feel the blackness like a weight crawling along my flesh, and I could smell the sweat and fear. This was true darkness. My flashlight skittered across the bloodied walls, searching for Passenger X, but in the sudden pitch he'd vanished. I caught only the scattered movements of crew and staff throughout the distant corridor. Crew members' flashlights winked on, and someone shouted, "Lock it! Lock it! Don't let them out! WW, what do we do?" Lily Suki's voice skimmed the edge of hysteria. At least, I hope it was hysteria. Her bunkmate was infected. Oh Lord, what if this is how it all goes down? Lily goes mad and I have to kill her? No, no. Hope is the thing with feathers. We've got to get upstairs, I said, clutching at straws. Evacuate. Light, shrilled a voice. A woman in a crew uniform bolted at us, cackling hysterically. She seized the flashlight before I could react. For a few seconds I struggled with her, and nearly had the light free when the woman sank her teeth into my hand. I screamed. Muscled arms wrapped around her out of the dark as I yanked the flashlight back. One of the security staff hauled her away, barking into his radio. "Got another one!" To Lily and I, he shouted. "Go! Go! Evacuate!" The main stairwell was behind him, but clamorous figures shouted from that direction. We retreated toward the bow. I glanced over my shoulder, briefly swinging the light back. Another crewman hustled over to the security guard's aid, or so I thought until he lunged, pressing his mouth to the other man's ear. Licking? Whispering something? As the two men fought, the woman broke free and rushed after us. "Run, run!" I shoved Lily. We ran. Our footsteps pounded along the concrete, the flashlight beam bouncing up and down as the cackling woman chased us. "Forward stairwell!" panted Lily. "No!" I seized her arm, yanking her into one of the intersecting corridors off the main highway, and through the nearest door, shutting off my light and clapping a hand to her mouth. In pitch darkness, we huddled against the door. Just outside, cackles of the woman who'd been chasing us, receding somewhere into the distance. Slowly, I removed my hand from Lily's mouth, leaned my lips to her ear and whispered, "The forward stairwell is a death trap. Crowds fleeing above and below will trample each other." A flash of crushed bodies in my brain. The old smell. God, we'd have been dead if we went that way. Shrieks and pounding footsteps reverberated in the distance. The chaos was spreading. Judging by a whole mass of people were fleeing toward the forward stairs. We both stiffened again as the cackling woman passed by outside the door. We'd have to escape either via the aft stairs at the opposite end of the ship. So far from here they might as well have been on Mars. Or the central stairwell was the widest, harboring very few corpses according to my explorations. But to reach it we'd have to head to the highway, and the chaos along that thoroughfare, where infection continued its spread. No. I flicked on the flashlight. Where are we? Hope flared. The infirmary. We were at the rear of the medical area, near a restroom and lab room. Down the hallway lay the examination rooms. The front entrance of the infirmary lobby led right to the elevator bay and central stairs. All we had to do was get through here. I should have listened to you. Lily's choking sobs shattered the silence. Oh God, I shouldn't have taken this gig. Hey, SHHHH, hey. She slid down the door, palms pressed against her eyes, and I squeezed her shoulder. Stop that. I didn't stay on board this doomed ship to leave you here in the dark. Get up. Why did you stay? She sniffled, palms still pressed to her face. You knew this would happen. For you, nitwit. And the rest of the passengers. To try to stop all this. I shrugged awkwardly. Obviously failed. My predictions always come true, unfortunately. How do I die? To know old age? I never saw your corpse. Liar. You touched her hand. You know she dies. But that wasn't exactly motivating. I squeezed her shoulder again. The infirmary was quiet, but from what I could remember, not entirely safe. I leaned down and whispered, Now I'm going to get us out of here, but there is at least one infected in here. How? Began Lily, but bit off her question, accepting my statement. I considered the flashlight. There were at least 2 people who would die here, the nurse who treated me in the examination room, and the secretary at the front desk. Given the state of the nurse's body, jammed under the table, she was murdered by someone else. But the secretary, I shuddered at a memory of her toothless face. And I may have missed decaying bodies hidden in closets or behind closed doors. I navigated this area mostly in the dark the first time I was here. I whispered. The light will have to be off or it'll draw attention. I think I can get us through without bumping into anything. In the pitch, Lily's wan face pinched with panic in the beam. Just follow. What if we run into one of them? SHHHH. I know where all the corpses are. I switched off the light. The hysterical edge to her breathing ratcheted up. When I took her hand, her grip on mine was cold, so cold. Like pulling a corpse straight out of a grave. I edged along the hall, feeling the wall for the door frames. Exam room 1, exam room 2. At the 3rd room, I stopped. A faint whimper sounded from beyond the door frame. Weeping? The voice of a frightened woman. A dilemma raged within me, a battle between self-preservation and altruism. Finally, careful to keep myself between Lily and whoever was inside, I faced the exam room and flicked on the flashlight. Hunched under the table was the nurse who'd rendered my exam. She'd lost her hijab, was clutching a dead phone and a napkin, sobbing and terrified and, much to her misfortune, saying. I held a hand out and whispered, "We're going to the lifeboats. Come on." She shook her head and recoiled. I moved in, tried to get closer, but she whimpered, "Go away, go away. You're not exactly a comforting figure." Lily whispered in my ear. Was this any time for sass? Ignoring her, I said, "It's all right. We'll help. Take my hand." I jumped at the sudden loud sob that emitted from her and snapped my light off, backing into Lily and fumbling for my knife. For some seconds, we huddled together in the pitch darkness, holding our breaths, but the only sound was the nurse's weeping. Slowly, the tension bled out of me. Oh, how I wanted to save her. That poor girl, but I didn't dare risk making any more noise. We still had to cross the lobby and I didn't know where we'd encounter the secretary. If the coast is clear, we'll come back, I told myself, taking Lily's frozen hand again. But of course, the coast would not be clear. The flashlight's beam into the room had been brief, but enough to show me under the table next to the huddled nurse, her decomposing corpse. She would die there. The guilt was a hand squeezing my heart, crushing it into a stone as we rounded the corner of the hallway, leaving the quiet sobbing behind us. A faint illumination shone in the lobby waiting room. A flashlight. Its beam moving irregularly. A strange sort of giggle, or maybe sob, drifted to the air. Lily's fingers tightened on mine. I steadied the knife in my hand and led us closer to the waiting area, that dancing and irregular light casting the chairs into rollicking shapes. It wasn't a bright light, but we'd still have to be careful to keep out of its range. And now that we were almost into the lobby waiting area, I could hear the secretary more clearly. Accompanied by horrible wrenching, gagging. Something clinked into the trash can. A tooth. My heart raced like a hummingbird's wings. Hope is the thing with feathers. If I can save even one life. I squeezed Lily's cold fingers, and then laid a hand on her shoulder and pressed. Stay. Hoping she understood, I disengaged myself from her. When the flashlight moved away from the edge of the stood, I stepped out and lunged at the secretary's desk. An unholy screech pierced the air. She shot to her feet. My knife plunged into her eye, right through to her brain. Punched up the tiny emergency flashlight she'd been using while she pried her teeth out. I'd caught the glimpse of her bloody jaw and pliers on her desk. I jerked the knife from her, the eyeball still attached. Whirled, swinging the light at the ready. But no other assault came. I'd been correct in my assumptions. There were only 2 deaths here. Aiming the light at Lily, I said, "Quick," and hustled us back to examination room 3. The nurse again shied back from us, but this time Lily took the lead, and after a few minutes of speaking quietly to the nurse in a hushed voice, managed to draw her with us. Even one life. Maybe we had only delayed her fate, and she'd end up back here under the table. Maybe, but hell if I was going to make it easy for fate to have its way. From the main entrance of the infirmary, we made it out to the stairwell at last and back passenger decks, where a dim, foggy light greeted us from the windows. A couple of grim-faced crew in life jackets stood near the concierge desk, ushering passengers up the grand staircase, urging everyone to bring only necessities and proceed in an orderly fashion. Passengers scurried out of cabins all along the corridors, some laden with luggage and laptop bags, others more pragmatically with only bottled water. Nervous security staff kept watch over the stairwell down to the lower decks, from which the shrieks of the infected reverberated along the narrow corridors. With each shout ringing from below, panic rippled through the crowd. Everyone was hyper-aware of the spreading infection. The infirmary nurse we'd pulled from the lower decks quickly deserted us to join the flood of people. I started to follow, but Lily nudged me and raised her eyebrows, giving my hand a significant glance. "You, might want to clean that and put it away." Oh. I was still clenching my knife, bloody from my encounter with one of the infected, an eyeball skewered on its tip. Horrified, I quickly wiped it off on a napkin from my pocket, tucked the knife into my jacket, and tried my best to wipe my bloodied hands clean. No wonder other passengers were giving us anxious looks in a wide berth. If not for Lily's presence, the security staff monitoring the stairs likely would never have let us through. Ow. I winced as I scrubbed, finally noticing the bite wound. I hadn't felt it at all during the adrenaline rush of our escape from the infirmary, but now it throbbed, oozing blood. I sought a clean rag from my bag. Security staff hovered nearby, eyeing me. Lily bound the wound and quietly asked, "Are you infected?" "Huh. Oh. No, it's not that kind of contagion," I said. "It's more like possession. It spreads through whispers. And it can affect electronics, even warped concrete. I don't know how exactly, but it's like my eyes, supernatural." "So that man they pulled in was a ghost from the sea? A vengeful spirit?" "No idea," I said. "My eyes don't see ghosts. Just death." "Just death?" "Yes. I am attuned to death." She'd finished tying my hand and used another rag to try to get at the blood on my face. I'd forgotten about that too. I smoothed my hair and tried to look less of a murderous lunatic. Wriggled ears in an awkward wave at the security guard and asked Lily, "Right, how do I look?" She squinted. "Just about your normal." "Good," I said, before my brain caught up to my mouth and realized what this implied about my normal. Why, okay, this felt like a lot of shade from someone I just hauled out of the contagion-filled underbelly of the ship. I scrunched my brow, about to retort when we both heard it, the shriek of a thin, high voice. Passengers wept and sobbed as they thronged past us. Panicky babble filled the air. But this was different. A child's voice. I looked to the security monitoring the stairs to see if any of them had registered the shriek, but they had moved off to deal with another unruly passenger. None of the other evacuees were paying attention. And of course Lily went after the cry. Unlike me, she hadn't suffered years of it to inure her to the fact that the deaths I predicted were inevitable. Also, I had that our own expiration dates were rapidly approaching, that our escape from below meant we were as doomed as all these other passengers. Soon, maybe right now, following her to the sound of the child's cry, I'd get infected, go mad, and immolate myself. But there was no sense trying to dissuade her. What I'd learned in my 40 years was that all roads led to the future I foresaw. I followed her past the elevator bay and down to the last cabin on the port side. The wail could be heard more distinctly now above the general din. Then came the sound of a woman's laughter, low and throaty. "Mama!" shrilled the child's voice. "Hello?" Lily pounded on the door. "Hello? Do you need help?" The throaty laughter abruptly stopped, though the child's wailing continued. I tensed, every muscle coiled. As footsteps approached the door, Lily's eyes flicked to me, signaling me to be ready. I sort of wanted to press pause on this moment and explain to her that a few lucky strikes didn't make me some kind of Buffy the Infected Slayer. But now the door was cracking open, mother ducker. I gripped my knife. The door slowly creaked inward, revealing a cabin in disarray, the gray light from the ocean view window falling on discarded clothes, a shattered mirror, and a small boy huddled by the bed, a bright green backpack beside him, packed with children's versions of emergency supplies. He clung to the straps, red-faced and weeping, while Lily pushed the door until the knob bumped the wall. No trace of the woman with the throaty laugh. I swept into the room. The rush of blood in my ears pounded like drums as I peeked around the bed and into the bathroom. The boy couldn't have been more than 5 years old, his voice hitching in a way I passed near him with my knife, his fear subsiding only when Lily knelt beside him and cooed in her soft, musical voice. SSSHHH, it's all right. Is that your bag for evacuation? I'm Lily, what's your name? B. Ben. The softest whisper of sliding wood sent spiders skittering up my spine. A wild-haired woman lunged out from the closet. I slammed into her as Lily grabbed the boy and ducked away. My knife cut into her shoulder. Her fingers raked my cheek. And then she embraced me, her tongue snaking inside my ear. I gasped at the sensation, a cold that went straight through my inner ear with her whispered words. I couldn't even make out what she said. Skew your ma on, all hissing and slurring. Then I slammed my head forward, into the bridge of her nose, knocking her into the closet. While the woman was fighting to disentangle herself from hangers and clothes, I fled the cabin after Lillian, grabbing the door handle behind us and dragging it shut. I held it tight, but the woman did not try to open it. Instead, the low, throaty laughter resumed inside. Sound of tinkling, shattering, a repetitive, dull thudding. She was banging her head against the glass. Releasing the door, I sank to my knees and cupped a hand to my ear, trying to shake the cold out. Ha ha ha, the shards mirror so pretty, tinkling hee hee schwasps, and the voices were like a wind blowing just inside my left ear, where she'd licked it. You okay, friend? Hey! Lily knelt beside me. There's something cold in my arg. I grabbed my head. I can hear them, the voices. Oh God. Her grip tightened on my shoulder. This is all my fault. I shook my head. No, you're not at fault. This was already going to happen. Already know how I die. Have known since I got on the ship. It's nothing to do with you. What? Lily looked horrified, but then the boy whined. Mama, at the door. She snatched his hand before he could open the cabin, pulled him near and tried to placate him. I forced myself to stand. The whole ship seemed to tilt under me, as if suddenly I could feel the water's current just beneath its belly, but I managed not to totter over. Come on, let's get going, get you both to the lifeboats. Promenade deck. Lily and Benjamin had to climb the stairs slowly to accommodate me. Most of the passengers had already mustered on deck 5 for evacuation, so we were virtually alone on the grand staircase. I clung to the railing for balance, pausing every few moments to try and shake the water out of my ear. The whispers, all will die, no escape he, merged into my own inner doubts now, echoing the dread I'd harbored ever since I'd boarded. A soft susurrus of fate, fate, death is fate. Come on, friend. Just a little further. Lily grabbed my hand, and I gasped. For an instant, I forgot about the voices. Forgot everything except the soft feel of her fingers in mine. Because her hand, it was warm. Hope fluttered in my ribs as we climbed the steps up the grand staircase, out into the cafe on deck 5. But then, just as suddenly, the hope flickered, sputtered, and died because... the smell. I ripped off the handkerchief I'd been wearing over my face to muffle the stench of rot. The aroma of coffee and pastries wafted to my nostrils. I whirled, checking for the bloodstain on the cafe rug, which had been there since the very first day, it was gone. The cafe was pristine, other than a few chairs knocked out of place. The scent of coffee grounds made my mouth water, and my stomach rumbled at the pastries in their glass case. My vision. I gasped. I can't see the future anymore. Couldn't see it. Couldn't smell it. Couldn't feel it in my cold hands. My own fingers were warm, the injured hand throbbing with coagulating blood. Yanking free from Lily, I tugged out my phone, illuminating myself with the flashlight and staring at my reflection on the screen. My eyes, they were no longer pitch black. At the center of the pupil shone an eerie, glowing light. And from my ear, spider webbing? I turned my head at a glowing strand that flowed into the ear. It felt cool, almost like a thread of luminescent water. As I turned my head, I caught a glimpse of the thread stretching downward, past the banister of the grand staircase. Do you see that? I called to Lily and the boy, but they only looked at me with wide, worried eyes. Of course they didn't see. That glowing strand was like my visions, something only I could perceive. Only now I wasn't glimpsing the future. I was glimpsing the power of Passenger X. I realized something else, too, as I bobbled my head to observe that glowing strand. It carried the whispers into my ear. When I looked up again, Lily and the boy were backing away. "You're going mad," said Lily. "Yes," I agreed. "The price I pay for staying. I saw my charred corpse the first day. I'll be going to my cabin to set fire to myself in a moment." "Oh," I said, beckoning them toward the promenade deck doors. "Escape. I stayed to make sure you and others could evacuate. I'll keep an eye out for Passenger X. As long as you get out of his reach, escape the Sea Star, you'll survive. At everyone dies. Go," I repeated, gritting my teeth against the voices. Lily looked sadly at me, but nodded and drew Benjamin with her through the doors. I followed them several steps behind. Outside, crowds were already loading onto the lifeboats under the formless, foggy morning sky. As my gaze tracked Lily and Benjamin, the sea breeze hit me. A ray of sun shone through the clouds. Hope. 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 A crewman spotted Lily and the boy and waved them over, calling out to the crowd to prioritize families. And as they stepped forward to accept a couple tickets, eyes shot through my veins, rushing from the base of my skull through every part of me as I saw that silvery glowing filament that whispered into my ear. There were dozens of glowing threads just like it. Dozens! They stretched throughout the crowd, infected passengers mingling with regular people, blending in. And as I touched one of the lines, its whisper roared into my mind, "Fingers, fingers, fingers, bite the fingers." I touched another nearby. "Ha ha ha, what if I tore out her scalp, ha ha ha. When I board I'll start tearing," and then I lunged. Lily cried out as I yanked her back. "Hey! What are you, I hissed. Lily's brows scrunched, teeth gritting. "Let go, no." "Why you foresaw this? Lily. I went on, ignoring the voices. "You can't board. He's not going to let any of those lifeboats make it sick." "What?" My grip was a vice, dragging her closer to me as I whispered. "It's not an evacuation. It's a trap." The horror of it sent fresh waves of ice down my spine. Lily clearly thought I'd lost it, and I burst, trembling with frustration. "I told you. This isn't a virus. There's intention behind it. Directing it. There are people in this crowd still in the early stages. Everyone on board those lifeboats will be infected by them, and when they're rescued, the infection will spread. Do you understand, Lily? What you'll be if you board. Those passengers fleeing, they aren't the survivors. He's letting them go." Realization slowly dawned on her, and she shook her head, eyes going wide, fingers wide-knuckled on the boy's hand. "There aren't any survivors," I whispered. "No, there are only hosts."